There is a pressure that surrounds you every day. Bills arrive before the money does. People move at the wrong pace. Timing refuses to cooperate. Rejection lands where you expected an answer. Silence fills the space where a signal should have appeared. And somewhere inside all of that noise, your own voice, your own sense of direction, gets smaller and smaller until life itself feels like the commander, and you feel like the one being ordered around. So what do most people do? They plead. They hope with a kind of desperate urgency that bends toward bargaining. They send their desire out into the world like a petition, waiting for the universe to sign it, return it, and finally grant what they are asking for. They look outside themselves for the power to change what is inside their life. And what they never stop to examine is the assumption buried beneath all of that pleading, the belief that they have no authority here, the belief that power lives somewhere else, and they must go to it, beg before it, and wait. What if that entire posture is the very reason order never comes? What if order begins not from outside, but from within? Wallace Wattles studied this question with a precision that most of his contemporaries never reached. He did not teach wishful thinking. He did not teach passive hope or emotional pleading dressed in spiritual language. What he taught was a definite way of thinking, grounded in faith sustained by gratitude, expressed through action. And he called it the certain way. In his understanding, the universe does not respond to panic or petition. It responds to lawful inner command. Definite thought is not a wish. It is an order given to a reality that is, by its nature, creative and responsive. The failure was never in the universe. The failure was in the absence of a clear command. This video will reveal the one inner command that orders the universe, not the loudest affirmation, not the most elaborate ritual, but the specific inner authority that Wattles identified as the root of all creation, all wealth, and all ordered receiving. Every teaching in this video builds toward that one commanding understanding. But before it can be received, something important must be named. It is possible that you have been begging for exactly what you have the inner authority to command. And until that difference is felt in the body, the law cannot work in your favor. Consider the architecture of a typical day. You wake up and almost immediately, before a single chosen thought has been formed, circumstances begin speaking. A notification arrives. An account balance appears. A memory of yesterday's unresolved tension returns, and without realizing it, you have already given the morning its instructions, not from your own definite inner command, but from whatever the outer world decided to announce first. This is how authority bleeds away before most people have even stood up from the bed. The deeper pattern is this: you wait, not passively in the sense of resting, but reactively in the sense of adjusting. You adjust your desire based on what evidence appears to be offering. If the morning feels promising, the desire rises. If the morning delivers friction, the desire contracts. If several days in a row bring no visible movement, the desire begins to negotiate with itself. Perhaps the goal was too large. Perhaps the timing is wrong. Perhaps something must be different before the wanting is permitted to remain whole. This is not discernment. This is the slow surrender of inner authority to outer appearance. Life begins to feel like the one giving orders, and the self begins to feel like the one waiting to receive them. This reversal is so common, so normalized, that it rarely even registers as a problem. Most people assume this is simply how reality works, that circumstances are the commanders and the inner life is the follower. They scan each day for permission, permission to feel certain, permission to feel worthy, permission to hold their desire steady. And because outer circumstances are wildly inconsistent, that permission never arrives in a reliable form, which means the inner state remains permanently unstable. What gets lost in this daily pattern is direction itself. Without a definite inner command that holds regardless of what the outer world shows, thought becomes scattered. Attention drifts toward whatever problem presents itself most loudly. The energy that should be moving in one clear direction is split among dozens of reactive responses to circumstances that were never meant to function as leaders. The viewer who reaches this state does not feel powerful. They feel exhausted, not because life is too hard, but because they are working against the law, attempting to receive order from a source that is, by nature, always in motion, always changing. and never capable of providing the stillness that real authority requires. The logical response to this exhaustion is to try harder, and trying harder for most people means pleading more urgently. The prayer shades into negotiation. The vision board becomes a kind of petition wall. The morning routine becomes a ritual of requesting, send this, bring that, make this happen, show me a sign that I am on the right path. There is nothing wrong with desire expressed in prayer, but there is a profound difference between prayer that rises from inner authority and prayer that rises from inner panic. One is a declaration, the other is a desperate question, and the universe, as Wattles understood it, does not distinguish between what you want and what you vibrate. It simply responds to what you are. Asking for signs from fear is one of the most self-defeating patterns a person can fall into. Because when fear asks for a sign, it is not really seeking confirmation. It is seeking relief from the discomfort of not knowing. And relief from fear is not the same as faith. A sign received by a frightened mind does not install peace. It creates temporary comfort that fades the moment the next piece of uncertainty arrives. So the person moves from sign to sign, asking endlessly, receiving momentarily, and never arriving at the steady inner authority that would make the asking unnecessary. Then comes the attempt at forcing conversations, forcing timelines, forcing relationships and business situations and creative projects to produce results faster than they are currently moving. Force has a particular texture. It feels like determination from the inside, but it operates from a premise of lack. The person who forces is the person who believes that if they do not make it happen by their own muscular effort, it will not happen at all. This is the opposite of the creative faith Wattles described. Creative faith is not passive, but it is not forceful either. It is a confident expectation that channels exist, that they will open, and that ordered interaction is sufficient to engage them. The most damaging variation of this false method is changing the inner state based on outer reaction. Receiving a rejection and immediately revising the command downward. Receiving silence and interpreting it as refusal. Receiving a slow response and concluding that the desire was wrong. The outer world becomes the editor of the inner world, and every draft of the original desire gets revised until it is barely recognizable. This is not humility. This is not wisdom. This is the complete abandonment of inner authority, performed so gradually that it feels like realism, when it is actually the precise mechanism by which most people fail to receive what they genuinely have the creative right to hold. What this pattern produces over time is a person who has become almost entirely reactive. Not reactive in a dramatic, obvious way, but reactive in the quiet, pervasive sense that every inner position is provisional. Every belief is subject to revision the moment evidence challenges it. Every desire is negotiable. Every command is offered tentatively with an escape clause already attached. This is the inner posture of someone who has handed their authority away so many times that they have forgotten they ever had it to begin with. The most immediate loss is the loss of definite thought. Wattles was extraordinarily precise about this. Definite thought is not vague aspiration. It is a clear mental image of a desired result, held with such consistency and faith that it functions as an instruction to the creative field. When that thought is replaced constantly, when the image shifts because circumstances seem to suggest it should, the instruction becomes incoherent. The universe receives a message that is being rewritten before it can be acted upon. The formless substance of creation cannot organize around a command that is changing every few hours. Gratitude collapses next. This is particularly significant because, in Wattles' understanding, gratitude is not a pleasant emotional accessory. It is the living connection between the individual and source. It is the state that keeps the channel open between desire and supply. When a person is trapped in the reactive cycle, waiting for signs, forcing outcomes, revising desires under pressure, gratitude becomes nearly impossible to sustain. How do you feel genuinely grateful when everything feels uncertain? How do you return thanks to a source you are simultaneously trying to manipulate with bargaining? The two postures are mutually exclusive, and when gratitude dies, the connection through which ordered creation flows narrows to almost nothing. Action finally becomes either passive or frantic. The passive version waits for certainty before moving, waiting for the right moment, the right feeling, the right outer signal that it is now safe to act. The frantic version moves in every direction at once, substituting volume for direction, hoping that if enough effort is exerted, something will stick. Neither of these is what Wattles called efficient action. Action performed in the present moment, guided by the definite inner command, done fully and with faith without scattering energy across fear-driven alternatives. The loss of inner authority does not just change how a person feels, it changes how they move through the world, what they build, what they receive, and ultimately, who they become. A divided mind cannot give a clear order. This is not a metaphor. It is a functional description of how thought operates in relation to the creative field. When the inner life holds desire in one moment and doubt in the next, when it commands in the morning and revises in the afternoon, when it asks from faith and immediately re-verifies from fear, the instruction reaching the formless is not a command. It is noise. And the universe does not respond to noise. It responds to order. Order requires a specific kind of inner relation, not perfection, not the absence of challenge, but a definite, consistent alignment between what is desired, what is believed, and what is enacted. This is the relation Wattles called creative relation to source. It is not achieved through louder prayer or more elaborate visualization. It begins with the decision to hold a clear command and to refuse systematically, to let outer circumstances override it. This means that the beginning of all real change is not in the circumstances. The circumstances are downstream. What is upstream is the quality of the inner command, what sits at the center of the inner life, giving direction to thought, to feeling, to attention, to action. That is the real originating cause of everything the outer world eventually produces. Before anything is visible, it is commanded. Before anything is commanded, there must be an inner authority stable enough to give that command and hold it. The law of inner authority is not secret in the sense that it has been hidden from you. It is secret in the sense that most people walk past it every day because it looks too simple, too inward, too quiet, compared with the loud and urgent demands of outer life. But Wattles returned to it endlessly in every chapter, from every angle, because he understood that this was not one principle among many. It was the principle on which every other principle rests. Order the inner life, and outer life must eventually reorganize. This is the law. And the next section reveals exactly what it contains. The law begins with thought, not thought in its casual wandering form, but definite thought. A clear mental image of what is desired, held consistently, without apology and without revision under pressure. Wattles described this as the foundational act of creation. Formless substance, the responsive, intelligent field of creative energy that underlies all visible reality, can only take form when it receives a specific instruction. Vague longing produces vague results. Fear-soaked wishing produces circumstances shaped by that fear. But a definite thought, held calmly and consistently, gives the creative field a clear design to work with. This is where order begins, in the precision of the inner image. Faith holds the order. Definite thought alone, without the inner position of faith, will gradually erode under the pressure of outer delay. Faith, as Wattles used it, is not blind optimism. It is the working assumption that the creative field is active, that the command has been received, and that channels exist through which the desired form will emerge, even if those channels are not yet visible. Faith is the inner posture that keeps the command intact between the moment of issuing it and the moment of receiving it. Without faith, the command expires before it can complete its work. With faith, the command holds its shape against every outer contradiction. Gratitude is not the third step in a sequence. It is the continuous atmosphere in which definite thought and faith operate. Wattles was emphatic. Gratitude is the living connection between the individual mind and the source of all supply. It is what keeps the creative channel open. A mind that holds gratitude is a mind that acknowledges in felt experience rather than mere intellectual statement that source is already working, that supply already exists, that the desired good is already present in its formless state, waiting for the conditions that will bring it into visible form. Gratitude does not thank Source for what has not yet appeared. It thanks Source for what is, in creative law, already arranged. Action expresses the order into the visible world. The inner command must become physical. Not frantic, not forced, but present. The person who has ordered from within does not wait passively for the desired form to materialize. They act in the world they currently inhabit, fully and efficiently, giving each present task its complete attention, moving in the direction the command indicates. Action is the visible form of inner authority. It is the command made flesh. When action is aligned with definite thought, faith, and gratitude, it moves through the world differently than fear-driven effort. It is calmer, more decisive, and more precise. And it tends to encounter channels that fear-driven action perpetually misses. The universe responds through lawful channels. This phrase is one of the most important in all of Wattles' teaching, and it is also one of the most frequently misunderstood. The response is not miraculous in the supernatural sense. It is lawful in the sense that cause produces effect through orderly mechanism. A person holding a definite creative command, sustained by faith, animated by gratitude, and expressed through efficient action, will encounter opportunities, people, timing, and circumstances that align with their command. These do not appear by coincidence. They appear because the inner order has created the condition in which the outer order can respond. The channel is not magic. It is the path that lawful inner command naturally opens. Wattles did not write for the fearful. He did not write for the passive. He wrote for the person who was willing to take the most difficult position a human being can take. Not physical difficulty, but the inner difficulty of holding a definite command in a world that seems to offer 100 reasons to revise it. He called this the certain way, and the word certain was chosen with complete deliberateness. Not hopeful, not wishful, not tentative. Certain, as in no longer subject to negotiation. As in the inner decision has been made and it holds. The certain way is not a personality type. It is not available only to the naturally confident or the intellectually brilliant. It is a method, a specific inner discipline that Wattles believed any person could adopt, regardless of their current circumstances, regardless of their past failures, regardless of their present fears. The method requires that the mind take a particular creative relation to source, to the desired form, and to the present moment. This creative relation is what he meant by thinking in the certain way. It is not about willpower. It is about assuming the correct inner position and maintaining it. That inner position begins with the assumption that the creative field is intelligent, responsive, and fundamentally oriented toward expansion and fullness rather than toward scarcity and refusal. This is a metaphysical position, but Wattles grounded it practically. If the universe is made of intelligent, formless substance that takes the form of the dominant thought given to it, then the person who thinks in the certain way is not acting arrogantly. They are acting lawfully. They are using the mind in the way the mind was designed to be used, as a creative instrument in alignment with source, not as a passive receiver of whatever circumstances happen to deliver. Authority in this frame is not ego dressed in spiritual language. Ego assumes that the self is the originating cause, that by force of personal will, reality bends. Wattles' concept of authority is fundamentally different. The individual is a creative channel through which source moves when the channel is cleared of contradiction, fear, and division. Authority belongs to source. What the individual exercises is alignment. When thought is definite, when faith holds, when gratitude connects, and when action expresses, the creative channel is open, and what moves through it is not personal power. It is the power of a universe that has always been willing to respond to a clear command. The distinction matters enormously. An ego-driven person who reads Wattles and concludes that they can dominate reality through sheer mental force has misread the law entirely. What Wattles described is not domination. It is cooperation, the deepest, most productive form of cooperation available to a human being. The individual aligns with the creative intelligence of source, gives it a clear, grateful, faithful command, and then acts in the present world with full effort and no contradiction. This is the authority's secret. Not the arrogance of commanding a servant, but the dignity of a mind that knows its lawful creative relation to the field it inhabits. There is a version of this teaching that has circulated widely and done a great deal of quiet damage. It is the version that tells the individual, think the right thoughts, visualize the desired outcome, and the universe will bend to your personal will. This version is seductive because it flatters the ego. It places the individual at the center of creation, as the architect of reality, as the one whose thoughts are so powerful that the cosmos reorganizes itself around their desires. This is not what Wattles taught, and the reason it has failed so many people is precisely because it locates authority in the wrong place. The inner life stopping its contradiction of source is not a passive act. It is one of the most demanding inner disciplines a person can undertake. When Wattles spoke of inner command, he was not describing a triumphant personal declaration made from ego confidence. He was describing the stilling of inner conflict, the quieting of the divided mind that says, I want this, and simultaneously says, but I cannot have it, that holds desire in one hand and doubt in the other. When that division is resolved, when desire, faith, and gratitude begin to speak in unison, the inner life stops contradicting source, and it is that stopping, that resolution of inner noise into inner order, that constitutes true command. The practical implication is significant. A person who believes they are commanding the universe from ego will try to force their mental image onto reality. They will push, they will demand. They will interpret delay as failure and absence as refusal. They will try to make the universe obedient to their timetable. This person is not operating from authority. They are operating from a deeper form of fear. The fear that if they do not take control, nothing will happen. True command, in Wattles' understanding, is entirely calm. It does not grip. It does not force. It does not become louder when circumstances seem to resist. It holds, it persists, and it trusts. Desire, faith, gratitude, and action, speaking one command. This is the inner unification that Wattles was pointing toward. Not the loudest declaration, but the most unified one. Not the most insistent prayer, but the most coherent inner state. When all four of these elements are operating simultaneously and consistently, when the desired form is clear, when the faith holds without demanding proof, when gratitude keeps the connection to source alive, and when action moves in the world without contradiction, the command that reaches the formless substance is a single, clear, unified instruction, and a unified instruction is infinitely more powerful than 1,000 divided petitions. True command, finally, must be calm. This is not an aesthetic preference. It is a functional requirement. Agitation disturbs the creative field in the same way that turbulence disturbs water. It makes it impossible to see clearly, impossible to work precisely, impossible to direct consistently. A command issued from agitation carries agitation as part of its instruction. A command issued from stillness carries stillness as part of its instruction. The universe, in Wattles' world, is an ordered field. It responds most completely to what is most ordered. Calm is not passivity. Calm is the highest form of creative authority, the inner silence from which the clearest commands emerge. The title of this teaching is not an exaggeration. The universe genuinely is ordered through the lawful inner state of the person who inhabits it with clarity and faith. This is not a poetic claim. Wattles grounded it in his understanding of formless substance as the underlying material of all visible reality, the thinking stuff from which all things are made and to which all things return. When the individual mind aligns with that substance through definite thought, the substance responds. Not reluctantly, not occasionally, but as a function of law, the same way water responds to gravity, the same way a seed responds to soil and sun. Circumstances do not reorganize themselves through magic. They reorganize through channels, the living network of people, timing, events, information, and opportunity that becomes accessible to a person whose inner command is clear. Channels are not passive. They are not simply waiting to be discovered. They become available in proportion to the clarity and consistency of the inner command. A person holding a definite, grateful, faithful command enters their daily life with a different quality of attention, a different manner of movement, a different way of engaging with the people and situations around them. And that difference, invisible, inner, lawful, is what opens doors that were, for all practical purposes, closed to the same person operating from panic. The command begins inside, but it is never meant to remain only inside. That is the critical point Wattles made about action. The inner command must be expressed, not anxiously, not forcefully, but faithfully. The person who orders from within then acts as though the order is already in motion. They perform the present duty with full effort. They meet the current opportunity with full attention. They do not hold back, waiting for circumstances to confirm that the command is working before they give themselves permission to act completely. The action itself is part of the command. It is the way the inner order reaches into the visible world and begins creating the conditions through which channels open. And this is what the title points to. The one inner command that orders the universe is not a specific phrase to be memorized or a ritual to be performed. It is a state, a unified, definite, grateful, faithful, active inner state that functions as a lawful instruction to the creative field. When that state is inhabited fully, the universe responds. Circumstances begin to reorganize. The right people appear at the right moment. Timing shifts. Opportunities become visible that were invisible before. This is not coincidence. This is law. And the one who has learned to hold their inner command has learned the most important skill available to a human being living in an intelligent, responsive universe. To understand the mechanism, begin with its most basic unit, a definite inner order. Not a preference, not a hope that something might eventually happen. A definite inner order is a clear, specific mental image of a desired form, held without apology, held without the constant qualification of doubt, held as though it already exists in the formless and is simply awaiting the conditions that will bring it into the visible. This is the beginning of all creative action in Wattles' world. Nothing real begins with vagueness. Nothing ordered emerges from a command that is perpetually being revised. The first requirement of the mechanism is precision. Know what you are ordering. The second element is equally important, and it is often the first to be abandoned under pressure, a refusal to beg from lack. Begging from lack is not simply a tone of voice or a posture of prayer. It is an inner position. It is the position of someone who believes the thing desired is outside their creative reach, that it belongs to the domain of fortune or chance, or the goodwill of forces that may or may not cooperate. When a person begs from lack, they encode lack into the command itself. The instruction reaching the formless is not "bring this into being." It is "I am without this, and I fear I will remain so." The formless substance does not interpret the literal content of what is being asked. It responds to the dominant inner state from which the asking arises. The desired form must be held with clarity, a clear mental image that is specific enough to guide action and consistent enough to survive the inevitable periods of outer silence. Wattles was precise about this. The formless substance does not organize around a general wish for betterment. It organizes around a specific impression. The clearer the desired form, the more precise the channel through which it can come. This does not mean the person must know every detail of the path. The person needs to know the destination. The mechanism handles the route. Gratitude is the fourth element of the mechanism, and in Wattles' teaching, it functions as both connector and purifier. Connector. It maintains the living relationship between the individual mind and the source of all supply, keeping the creative channel open between desire and delivery. Purifier. It removes the contamination of entitlement, panic, and self-referential ego from the command, leaving only the clean instruction of a mind that trusts source completely. A command offered in gratitude is a command offered from fullness, not from emptiness. And fullness in this law attracts more fullness, not because of emotional resonance in a superficial sense, but because gratitude is the accurate inner acknowledgement that source is already at work. Then comes the action pattern, the way of moving through the visible world that gives the inner command its physical expression. This action must be obedient to the command, not to the fears of the moment. It must be efficient. Every present task done fully, every present opportunity engaged completely, nothing held back in waiting for circumstances to feel more favorable. The person who acts from inner command does not scatter their effort across 100 fear-driven contingency plans. They act in the direction their command points, they do what the present moment requires, and they do it completely. Finally, and perhaps most crucially for long-term operation, a calm authority that does not collapse under delay. Delay is not refusal. Silence from the outer world is not a signal that the command has been ignored. It is simply the interval between the issuing of the command and the arrival of the ordered form through the appropriate channels. Every mechanism requires time to operate. Every channel requires clearing before it flows freely. The person who abandons their inner command during the interval of silence has effectively cancelled their order at the moment when it was closest to completion. Calm authority is the discipline of holding the command through the silence, without revision, without collapse, without the panic that interprets absence as evidence. The mechanism begins with a single originating movement. Inner command orders thought. When a definite, grateful, faithful command is held in the inner life, it functions as a magnetic center around which thought begins to organize. Random, scattered mental activity, the constant noise of worry and distraction, does not disappear overnight, but it begins to yield to the gravity of the central command. The mind starts returning to the same clear image, the same working assumption, the same faithful expectation. Thought becomes less diffuse and more directional. This is the first visible effect of inner command, and it is entirely internal. Ordered thought then orders feeling. The relationship between thought and feeling is not a mystery. It is a direct and reliable mechanism. When thought becomes consistently oriented toward a definite creative expectation rather than toward fear and lack, the emotional atmosphere of the inner life begins to shift. Anxiety does not vanish immediately, but it begins to lose its dominance. Confidence, which is not arrogance, but the emotional expression of faith, begins to take up more inner space. The feeling tone shifts from reactive, moving up and down with every outer signal, to commanded, grounded in the central inner position that outer circumstances cannot permanently dislodge. Ordered feeling then orders attention. Attention is not neutral. It seeks what the inner life has instructed it to seek. A person living from fear will attend to every sign of danger, every indication that things are going wrong, every piece of evidence that confirms their worst expectations, not because they are weak, but because their attention has been ordered by their inner command, which is the command of fear. A person living from a definite, faithful command attends differently. Their attention moves toward possibility, toward the channels that are beginning to form, toward the people and situations whose appearance is connected to the direction they are moving. Attention is the lens of the inner command, and when the command changes, the lens changes with it. Ordered attention then orders action. This is the step where the invisible becomes visible. A person whose attention has been reorganized by a clear inner command begins to move differently through their daily life. They notice what they previously overlooked. They engage with opportunities that previously felt irrelevant. They speak differently, choose differently, prioritize differently. Their action is not motivated by the desperate energy of fear-driven effort. It is guided by the quiet clarity of attention that has been organized by a definite inner command. And the quality of that action, its precision, its faithfulness, its efficiency, is fundamentally different from the scattered effort that preceded it. Action then creates contact. The person moving in the direction of their command begins to encounter the world at the points where the command is relevant. They meet people whose purposes intersect with theirs. They arrive at situations whose structure creates opening. They speak words that are heard differently because they are spoken from a different inner position. Contact is not random. It is the natural result of ordered action moving through a world full of channels that are waiting to respond to a clear, consistent, directed approach. Every day of faithful action in the direction of a definite command is a day of contact being created. Contact opens channels. This is the hinge point in the mechanism, the place where the inner order begins to produce outer reorganization. A channel, in Wattles's sense, is any pathway through which the formless substance of the desired form begins to move toward visible expression. A channel might be a person who offers information. A channel might be a timing that suddenly becomes favorable. A channel might be a circumstance that removes a previous obstacle or a development that reveals a path previously hidden. Channels do not open for people who are not positioned to receive them. They open for people whose inner command has organized their thought, feeling, attention, and action into the precise readiness that the channel requires. And when channels open, circumstances reorganize. This is the final movement of the mechanism, the point at which the invisible law becomes visible result. Circumstances do not reorganize themselves through a supernatural override of natural processes. They reorganize because the person has changed their inner position in a way that changes their outer movement, which changes the quality of their contact, which opens channels that were previously inaccessible, which creates the conditions through which the desired form can arrive. The mechanism is entirely lawful, entirely traceable, and entirely dependent on the quality and consistency of the inner command that initiated the sequence. Begging is the first and most fundamental interruption. When the inner state shifts from command to petition, from "this is ordered and in motion" to "please, I need this to happen," the mechanism is broken at its source, not because the universe is offended by asking, but because begging encodes its own premise into the instruction. To beg is to acknowledge at the deepest level of inner experience that the desired thing is not available, that it is held by a power that may or may not cooperate, and that the individual has no creative authority in the matter. This acknowledgement, held as the dominant inner state, becomes the effective command, and it produces results that match it. Panic breaks the mechanism at the level of ordered feeling. When circumstances deliver bad news, or when the interval of silence extends beyond what patience can comfortably hold, panic arrives as a form of inner alarm that overrides everything else. Under panic, thought loses its definiteness. The clear mental image becomes clouded by worst-case scenarios. Feeling becomes chaotic. Attention scatters toward every possible sign of danger simultaneously. And action, rather than being ordered and efficient, becomes either paralyzed or frantic, neither of which expresses the inner command. Panic is not a failure of character. It is a natural response to perceived threat. But it is also, from the perspective of this mechanism, the most efficient way to cancel an order that was otherwise on its way to completion. Changing desire hourly destroys the mechanism at the level of command integrity. The formless substance organizes around consistent, repeated instruction. A command that is revised every time circumstances seem to suggest a different direction never completes its organizing work. The channels that were beginning to form in response to the original command are abandoned. New channels begin to form in response to the new command. Then, those are abandoned when the next round of evidence suggests another revision. The result is a permanent state of creative incompletion. Many things started, nothing finished, and a growing conviction that the mechanism does not work, when in fact the mechanism is working perfectly. It is simply responding to a command that keeps changing. Speaking against the command is one of the most common and least recognized interruptions. Every time a person says in casual conversation or private self-talk, "I cannot afford this. Nothing is working. I always end up in the same place. It will probably fall through," they are issuing a counter-command. Words are not decorative. They are the audible expression of the inner state. And when the inner state is giving a creative command while the spoken word is expressing its opposite, the mechanism receives a contradiction. Wattles understood this with great clarity. He was insistent that the person seeking to think in the certain way must refuse to speak against their desire, not out of superstition, but because speech both reflects and reinforces the inner position from which it arises. Acting from fear instead of from command is the interruption that most closely mimics correct action and is therefore the hardest to recognize. Fear-driven action can look identical to faith-driven action from the outside. The same meetings attended, the same calls made, the same letters written. But the inner position from which the action arises is opposite. Fear-driven action says, "I must do this because if I don't, something terrible will happen. Command-driven action says, I do this because it is the visible expression of my inner order. The first carries the instruction of threat avoidance. The second carries the instruction of creative advance. The universe, indifferent to the surface behavior and responsive to the inner state, organizes accordingly. Treating outer silence as superior authority is the interruption that kills the most orders at the moment they are closest to completion. Silence from the outer world during the interval between command and delivery is not a message. It is simply the time the mechanism requires to complete its work through the appropriate channels. The person who interprets silence as refusal, who reads absence of visible movement as evidence that the command was wrong, who uses the quiet period as confirmation of their deepest fear. This person is, in effect, granting the authority to define the command's outcome to a circumstance that has no authority at all. Outer silence cannot cancel an inner command. Only the person who holds the command can cancel it, by withdrawing the definiteness, the faith, or the gratitude that keeps it alive. Think of the inner world as a kingdom, not a metaphor chosen for its grandeur, but for its precision, because a kingdom is, above all, an ordered domain. It has a center of authority. It has a throne from which commands are issued. Everything in the kingdom takes its direction from that throne, and the character of the throne determines the character of the kingdom. When the throne is occupied by a wise, clear, and confident authority, the kingdom moves with order and purpose. When the throne is vacant or occupied by something that should not be in command, the kingdom moves with confusion and contradiction. Every inner life has a throne. The question is not whether something occupies it, something always does. The question is what? In the lives of most people who are living reactively, who are giving authority to outer circumstances, who are begging rather than commanding, the throne is occupied by fear. Not dramatically, not in the form of constant terror, but quietly, pervasively, in the form of the underlying assumption that outer conditions are the source of inner permission. Fear sits on the throne, and fear gives the orders. And the orders it gives are entirely consistent with its nature. Watch for danger, hedge every desire, adjust every command when evidence seems threatening, beg from outside what can only be commanded from within. When gratitude takes the throne, and alongside it, definite thought in its clearest form, the orders that go out from the inner life change entirely. The kingdom begins to move differently. Thought receives a new directive. Organize around this clear desired form. Feeling receives a new directive. Rest in the connection to source that gratitude maintains. Attention receives a new directive. Observe where channels are forming and move toward them. Action receives a new directive. Express this inner command in the visible world with full effort and calm confidence. The kingdom is now organized. And an organized kingdom sends a fundamentally different instruction to the universe than a kingdom run by fear. The universe hears the throne, not the speech delivered in front of it. This is the single most important point of this entire metaphor, and it demands to be held carefully. A person can speak beautiful, confident, spiritually informed words about abundance, creativity, and faith, while the actual throne of their inner life is occupied by anxiety, doubt, and a deep background conviction of lack. The universe does not respond to the speech. It responds to the throne. It responds to the dominant inner position that is actually organizing thought, feeling, attention, and action, the actual commander, not the performed one. This is why Wattles' approach was never about crafting the right words or adopting the right spiritual vocabulary. It was about changing who sits on the throne. Change the inner commander, and the kingdom reorganizes. And when the kingdom reorganizes, the universe, which responds to inner order with outer order, begins to answer. There is a name for the pattern that keeps this law from working, and the name is inner abdication. Not outer failure, not unfavorable circumstances, not a universe that has decided to withhold. Inner abdication, the quiet, repeated act of handing the authority of the inner throne to whatever appears outside. Every time circumstances deliver a difficult piece of information, and the inner life immediately reorganizes itself around that information, rather than around the definite command, abdication has occurred. The throne has been vacated and handed to evidence. The most insidious feature of this pattern is how automatic it is. Most people do not experience their reactive inner adjustment as a choice. They experience it as the natural and appropriate response to reality. Something happens, they feel it, their inner state adjusts. This seems like common sense, like sanity, like the reasonable behavior of a person who is not delusional about what is occurring around them. But what appears to be responsiveness is actually something else. It is the ongoing installation of outer circumstances as the sovereign authority of the inner life. Evidence commands mood. The throne is never occupied by a chosen inner position. It is perpetually occupied by whatever the outer world delivered most recently. The result is a person who has, in practice, no stable inner authority. Their certainty is conditional. Their faith is provisional. Their gratitude lasts until the next difficulty arrives. Their action is organized not by a definite inner command, but by the changing quality of outer signals. In Wattles's terms, this person has abdicated their creative relation to Source, not dramatically, not deliberately, but through the accumulated effect of 1,000 small surrenders of the throne to circumstances that were never meant to sit in it. The first disguise is the language of realism. I am just responding to reality. This statement feels responsible. It feels like the behavior of someone who is honest about their situation, who is not lost in wishful thinking, who is mature enough to accept what is. But examine what is actually being said. Reality, meaning outer circumstances, visible evidence, the current state of what is already materialized, is being assigned the authority to determine the inner state. The creative law inverts this. Inner state is the cause. Outer circumstance is the effect. Responding to the effect as though it were the cause keeps the person permanently in the position of reaction, never in the position of creation. I cannot feel certain until things change. This is the most direct form the abdication takes in conscious thought. It places certainty downstream of circumstances rather than upstream. It says, "First let the outer world show me that the command is working. Then I will feel the faith that the command requires in order to work." This is the exact reversal of the creative sequence Wattles described. Faith does not come after the visible result. Faith is what creates the condition in which the visible result can arrive. Waiting to feel certain until things change is waiting for the harvest before planting the seed. The sequence is impossible. And yet it is the most common inner position most people occupy, and it feels completely rational to them. I need the universe to show me first. This variation adds a spiritual dimension to the abdication, which makes it particularly difficult to recognize as such. It sounds like a request for confirmation, a reasonable desire for some evidence that one is on the right path before investing further inner energy. But this is precisely what Wattles called asking for signs from fear rather than walking in faith. The universe, the creative field, the formless substance, does not function as a preview system. It responds to the command it receives. If the command says, "Show me first, then I will believe," the command being received is not faith. It is conditional trust. And conditional trust does not open channels. It narrows them. I have no authority here. This is the deepest form the abdication takes, and it is usually not expressed consciously. It lives beneath the other statements as their common foundation. When a person feels, at the level of lived experience rather than intellectual belief, that they have no real creative authority, that circumstances are simply what they are, that they were born into a particular set of conditions and can only navigate them, that the people and forces around them are the real determiners of what happens next, they have accepted a position that is, in Wattles' world, factually incorrect. Every human being, in his understanding, exists in creative relation to the formless substance. Every human being can give a command to that substance through definite thought, faith, gratitude, and action. The person who believes they have no authority here is mistaken. But the mistake functions as though it were true. Each of these statements is an act of abdication, performing as wisdom. They sound careful. They sound humble. They sound like the speech of a person who has learned from experience not to expect too much. But they are, in every case, the language of a person who has given the inner throne to outer conditions, who has confused realism with reactivity, humility with helplessness, and caution with the abandonment of creative authority. Naming them for what they are is the beginning of reclaiming the throne. When inner abdication becomes the default position, when the throne is perpetually vacant or perpetually occupied by whatever circumstances arrived most recently, life begins to feel genuinely chaotic. Not because the outer world has become more turbulent, but because without a stable inner command organizing the person's response to the outer world, every event carries equal weight. Every setback is a crisis. Every silence is a refusal. Every delay is a confirmation that things are not going to work. The lack of an organizing inner command means there is no framework within which outer events can be interpreted as part of a larger, ordered process. Everything feels like it matters equally, immediately and urgently. The result is not alertness, it is exhaustion. Desire loses its shape under prolonged abdication. The original clear image, the definite form that the person genuinely wanted to bring into being, does not survive the repeated pressure of revisions. Each time evidence suggests that the desire is too large, too unlikely, or too late, the person trims it, not with conscious resignation but with the quiet accumulation of practical adjustments. The desired form becomes smaller, safer, less specific. Eventually, what remains is not a definite command, but a vague preference, something the person would be grateful to receive, but is no longer holding with the creative authority that could actually produce it. The desire has been revised into a wish, and a wish cannot order the formless. Action becomes inconsistent, and inconsistency is particularly damaging because it prevents any single channel from being fully developed. The person who acts faithfully for 3 days and then pauses for a week, waiting to see if the 3 days produced visible results, is not running the mechanism. They are testing it, and the mechanism cannot be tested into operation. It can only be run into operation. Consistent, ordered action in a clear direction, performed day after day, regardless of whether visible results are yet apparent, is what allows channels to develop from initial contact to full opening. Inconsistent action, governed by whether the outer world has recently seemed cooperative, produces partial channels that never complete. Ultimately, the person who keeps the abdication pattern becomes ruled by whatever appears. The strongest voice in the room commands the day. The most recent piece of news determines the emotional weather. The most insistent external demand organizes the priorities. There is no stable inner compass because the compass was handed to the outer world, which has no capacity to hold it steadily. The result is a life that feels perpetually reactive, responsive but not creative, mobile but not directional, alive but not ordered. This is the cost of keeping the inner enemy. Not dramatic catastrophe, but the slow, steady, invisible loss of creative authority. The gradual erosion of the one capacity that the law of inner command requires most completely. The first movement toward reclaiming the throne is a decision, not a feeling, not an inspiration, but a deliberate choice to stop giving authority to evidence. This is harder than it sounds, because the habit of looking to outer circumstances for inner direction is deeply embedded. Every neural pathway in a person who has lived reactively runs in that direction, but the choice can precede the feeling. The person does not need to feel certain before choosing to hold a definite command. The holding of the command is itself the beginning of the feeling of certainty. Authority comes from the act of assuming authority, not from waiting until it feels natural to do so. Return to definite thought, meaning, take the desired form off the shelf where repeated revisions have pushed it, examine it clearly, restore its original shape, and hold it again. Not with the desperate grip of someone who has been without it for too long, but with the calm, steady, deliberate attention of someone who has remembered something important. The desired form still exists. The creative field has not closed. The formless substance has not decided that this person's command is no longer eligible for response. What interrupted the process was the inner abdication. What resumes it is the inner decision to think definitively again, to reinstate the clear image and hold it without the constant qualification of doubt. Gratitude must re-enter before it can be felt naturally. This is an important and practical point. A person who has been living in reactive mode for weeks or months may not feel spontaneous gratitude. The connection to source may feel thin. The sense that supply is present and that the creative field is oriented toward them may feel abstract and unconvincing. Gratitude in those moments is an inner act of will, a choosing to acknowledge what is already true before it feels emotionally obvious. Wattles was clear that gratitude is not a response to favorable circumstances. It is a position taken in relation to source. Taking that position, even when the feeling is thin, begins to restore the connection. The feeling follows the position. These three movements, stopping the donation of authority to evidence, returning to definite thought, and re-entering gratitude, are not a complete transformation. They are the beginning of one. They prepare the inner life for what the next section will unfold, the turning point where abdication ends and commanded living begins in earnest. The throne is not recovered in a moment of dramatic inspiration. It is recovered through the quiet, persistent, daily decision to hold the inner command rather than hand it to whatever appears outside. And that decision, made and remade each day, is the seed of every ordered outcome the law can produce. Begging must stop, completely, and at the level of the inner position, not merely the outer behavior. This does not mean prayer ends or desire is suppressed. It means the posture from which desire is expressed must change. Prayer from authority is not the same as prayer from lack. Desire held in faith is not the same as desire held in fear. The person who is ready to reclaim inner command stops asking the universe to grant them what they refuse to hold as already arranged. They stop the petition, they stop the negotiation, they stop treating source as a reluctant donor that must be persuaded. And in stopping that, they open the space in which a genuine command can take form. Circumstances must stop defining identity. The person who is committed to inner command no longer allows their sense of who they are, their worthiness, their capacity, their creative authority, to be determined by what the outer world is currently showing. Circumstances are effects. They reflect what has already been commanded, consciously or unconsciously, in the recent inner past. They are not verdicts. They are not permanent facts about what is possible. They are information about where the inner command has been, not about where it must remain. Allowing present circumstances to define identity is allowing yesterday's inner state to govern tomorrow's creative output. The turning point requires that the direction of influence be reversed. Identity shapes circumstance, not the other way around. The command must stop changing under pressure. Every time the inner command is revised in response to difficulty, silence, or apparent failure, the mechanism resets. Channels that were forming collapse. The formless substance stops organizing around one image and begins the slow, uncertain process of organizing around the revised one. Permanence of command, not rigidity but consistency, is what allows the mechanism to complete its work. The person at the turning point must develop the inner discipline of holding the command through pressure, through silence, through the periods when every outer signal seems to recommend revision. The command is not negotiable with circumstances. Panic must be refused as an instructor. This is not the same as suppressing emotion. Panic will arise. Difficult news will land. Frightening intervals will occur. The turning point does not demand the elimination of human feeling. It demands that panic not be given the authority to rewrite the inner command. The person who feels panic and then, from a place of chosen stillness, returns to the definite thought, the faith, and the gratitude. This person has not failed to feel their emotion. They have refused to let that emotion sit on the throne. The feeling passes through. The command remains. Waiting for outer permission must end. This is the final thing that must stop at the turning point, and it is often the last to go because it masquerades as patience and discernment. Waiting for the outer world to signal that it is now safe to act from full creative authority is not patience. It is the suspension of the very inner position that creates the conditions in which outer movement becomes possible. Permission is not granted by circumstances. It has always been present as a function of the creative law itself. The person who waits for outer permission before assuming inner authority waits indefinitely, because the outer permission they are waiting for can only arrive after the inner authority has already been assumed. Order begins within. This must be accepted not as an intellectual proposition, but as a working premise that governs daily behavior. Not order might begin within, or order sometimes begins within in favorable conditions. Order always begins within. Every outer circumstance that has ever arrived in anyone's life, whether or not they were applying this law consciously, was preceded by an inner state that created the condition for it. Accepting this fully means accepting complete creative responsibility, which is not a burden but a liberation. If order begins within, then the capacity to change the outer life is always present, always available, always beginning in the same place, the inner throne. The inner command must be definite. Accepting this means accepting the discipline of clarity, the willingness to form a specific desired image and hold it without the constant softening that vague, protected hoping provides. Specificity feels vulnerable. It gives something clear to fail at. Vague desire offers the comfort of plausible deniability. If nothing specific was commanded, nothing specific can fail to arrive. But this protection is the exact feature that makes vague desire creatively ineffective. The person at the turning point accepts the vulnerability of clarity because they understand that without it, the creative field receives nothing actionable. Definiteness is not stubbornness, it is creative precision. Gratitude gives the command its purity. This must be accepted as a functional truth, not a pleasant sentiment. Without gratitude, without the living, felt connection to source that gratitude maintains, the inner command operates from a position of disconnection. It becomes the ego's desire rather than the channel's expression. Gratitude restores the command to its proper relation, the individual expressing a clear creative intent through the intelligence of source, rather than the individual demanding their personal preference against the universe. Accepting gratitude as functional means making it a daily practice, not waiting to feel it spontaneously, but taking the position of gratitude deliberately as an act of inner discipline, knowing that the feeling follows the choice. Action gives the command its embodiment. Accepting this means accepting that inner authority without physical expression is incomplete. The creative law requires both, the invisible command and the visible expression. A person who holds perfect inner authority but never acts in the visible world toward their command has not completed the circuit. The channel cannot open to someone who is not positioned within the channel. The formless substance takes the path of least resistance toward the visible world, and for a human being, that path always runs through action. Accepting the requirement of action means releasing the fantasy of effortless materialization and embracing the dignified, faithful, ordered effort of a person who knows exactly why they are acting and from exactly what inner position. The universe responds through channels. Accepting this means releasing the expectation of sudden, miraculous, circumstance-defying delivery and accepting instead the orderly, progressive, channel-dependent reality of how creative law actually works. Channels are people, timing, opportunities, conversations, circumstances, information, all the specific, visible, natural pathways through which the formless substance of the desired form moves into visible expression. The person who accepts this stops looking for magic and starts looking for channels. They begin to recognize in the events and encounters of daily life the early signs of channel formation, the small alignments, the unexpected conversations, the shifts in timing that are not coincidental, but are the lawful beginning of the mechanism completing its work. The new inner position begins with a single clear declaration of orientation. I order from within. These 4 words are not a positive affirmation in the colloquial sense, not a phrase repeated to convince a doubtful mind. They are a statement of position. They describe where the authority lives, where the command originates, and from what inner ground all thought, feeling, attention, and action will now take their direction. This declaration does not claim personal omnipotence. It does not assert ego dominance over reality. It simply names the correct direction of the creative flow, from inner to outer, from command to expression, from source alignment to visible result. From this position, Begging is not simply abandoned, it becomes unnecessary. The person who genuinely holds the inner position of command has no need to beg, because they are not approaching the universe as a petitioner approaching a reluctant authority. They are approaching the universe as a creative channel approaching a responsive field. The field is not reluctant. The field is not withholding. The field responds to the instruction it receives, and the instruction is being given from a place of clarity, faith, and gratitude, rather than from a place of lack and panic. The question changes from, will the universe give me this, to, am I giving the universe a clear enough order? That shift in question is the shift in creative position. The inner throne must belong to Source, not to the ego and not to circumstances. This is the deepest meaning of the new inner position. When gratitude sits at the center of the inner life, Source sits at the center of the inner life, because gratitude is the living acknowledgement that Source is the origin of all supply, all creative substance, all organizing intelligence. The throne occupied by gratitude and definite thought is a throne occupied by the creative law itself, channeled through the individual mind. This is not passivity. The individual still gives the specific command, still acts in the visible world, still makes the choices and moves through the channels. But the authority behind those movements is not personal willpower. It is the creative intelligence of a universe organized around the principle of fullness, expansion, and supply. From this inner throne, action takes a different quality. It is no longer the anxious movement of someone trying to force an outcome. It is the natural, ordered expression of an inner command that has already been given. The person acts because the command requires action. They act in the way that the command indicates. They act in the present moment, with the present task, giving it their complete attention and effort. And they act without the hidden agitation of someone who believes that if they stop acting for even a moment, the desired form will slip away. Command-driven action is calm precisely because the person who takes it knows that the action is an expression of the command, not a substitute for faith. The command is held. The action flows from it. The channel opens through it. Every person who reaches this understanding stands at a genuine decision point. The two options are not dramatized alternatives from a motivational speech. They are the two actual modes of relating to the creative law that are available to any human being in any moment. The first mode is begging, approaching the universe as though it holds what you need and may or may not release it, based on how earnestly you petition it. The second mode is command, approaching the universe as a responsive creative field that organizes around the definite, grateful, faithful inner state you inhabit. These two modes are not equivalent. They produce different results, not because one is rewarded and the other is punished, but because they constitute different instructions to the formless substance. Begging feels like humility. This is important to acknowledge because dismissing the appeal of the begging posture without understanding its interior logic is a failure of honest examination. When a person begs, when they hold their desire with open hands, when they acknowledge that they are not certain, when they ask with a kind of emotional vulnerability, it can feel like the spiritually appropriate posture. It can feel like the honest admission of dependence. And in some genuine spiritual contexts, that vulnerability is indeed a form of authentic opening. But in the context of Wattles' creative law, begging is not humility. It is fear performing as humility. The fear of commanding, the fear of holding a definite position, disguises itself as spiritual appropriate smallness. The distinction is subtle but decisive. Command, in turn, can feel like arrogance. Stating a definite creative intention, holding it with faith, refusing to revise it under pressure, acting from it with calm authority, can feel, especially to people trained in self-effacement, like an overreach. Who am I to command the universe? What gives me the right to hold a definite expectation when so many others are suffering, when the world is uncertain, when I myself am imperfect? These are real questions, and they deserve a real answer. The command is not issued by the ego. The command is issued by a human being in lawful creative relation to the source of all substance. It is not personal assertion against reality. It is the appropriate and lawful use of the creative faculty that every human being possesses. That is not arrogance, that is law. The choice is therefore not between pride and humility. It is between an accurate and an inaccurate understanding of how the creative law operates. The person who chooses begging because it feels more humble is not choosing the spiritually superior option. They are choosing the creatively ineffective one, and they are paying for that choice with exactly the kind of chronic uncertainty and outer disorder that brought them to this teaching in the first place. The person who chooses command not from ego, but from genuine understanding of their lawful creative relation to source, is choosing the position that Wattles spent his life describing and defending. The invitation at this decision point is simple and clear. Choose authority. Choose the inner throne. Choose the command. Because that is what you were always meant to occupy. The most powerful daily practice available within this law begins not with a declaration, but with a question. Who is on the throne? This question, asked honestly in the first moments of each day, before the outer world has fully arrived with its demands, creates a moment of genuine self-examination. Is the inner throne occupied by gratitude and definite thought, by the chosen command held in faith? Or has it already been filled by anxiety about what today might bring, by yesterday's unresolved tension, by the low background noise of doubt that has been living there so long it feels like furniture? The question is not asked to produce guilt, it is asked to produce clarity. And clarity in this law is always the beginning of correction. After the honest examination, name the command for the day. Not a vague aspiration, I hope things go well, but a definite, chosen direction. What is the desired form that this day's thought, attention, and action will serve? This naming does not require elaborate ritual. It requires clarity and commitment. The person says, inwardly and deliberately, today I hold this command. This is the creative direction I am moving in. This is the instruction I am giving to the formless through my thought, my attention, and my action for the duration of this day. The command does not change when the morning becomes difficult. It does not change when a setback arrives at noon. It holds. Gratitude must precede action, not as a sequence to be performed, but as a genuine inner position to be entered before the activity of the day begins. Entering gratitude means briefly, deliberately acknowledging what is already true, that source is active, that supply exists in the formless, that the creative field is responsive, that the desired form is already arranged in its invisible state, waiting for the channels through which it will arrive. This acknowledgement is not about generating positive emotion as a technique. It is about re-establishing the connection to source that reactive living had interrupted. So a day begun in gratitude is a day in which the channel between inner command and creative field is open from the first hour. When evidence arrives during the day, as it will, and often in its most challenging forms, the practice is a refusal to let that evidence rewrite the command. This is the daily discipline, not denial. The evidence is real, the challenge is real, the difficulty is real. But reality is not limited to what is currently visible. The formless is real. The channel being formed is real. The creative process currently in motion, invisible to outer perception, is real. The practice is the daily act of holding the command alongside the evidence without allowing the evidence to become the superior authority. The evidence reports what has already been created. The command determines what will be created next. Thought discipline is the daily labor of inner authority. It begins with the replacement of the most common reactive thought pattern, life is against me, with the most accurate creative position, I order from within. These are not empty substitutions. They are the replacement of a creatively paralytic premise with a creatively active one. The first locates authority outside, the second returns it inside. And because thought is what governs the subsequent cascade, feeling, attention, action, the replacement of this single foundational thought changes the entire character of the day's inner movement. Practice this replacement not occasionally, not when things feel easy, but specifically in the moments when life is against me arrives with the most convincing force. I need permission before I act is another foundational reactive thought that thought discipline must address directly. It appears in countless forms, waiting for the right credentials, the right timing, the right outer confirmation that an action is appropriate before taking it. Every version of this thought reinstates outer circumstances as the sovereign authority and suspends the inner command. Replace it with, I act in lawful authority. Not reckless action, the law does not reward chaos, but deliberate directional action taken from the inner position of creative authority, without waiting for circumstances to grant the approval that the law already provides. The authority is lawful. The action is therefore lawful. No outer permission is required. The third replacement addresses the period of outer silence most directly. Nothing is responding is the thought that arrives during the interval between inner command and visible result, during the time when the mechanism is working but not yet producing evidence visible to the outer eye. This thought, when accepted as accurate, functions as a cancellation notice. It says the command has failed, and the inner response to that thought is typically a return to begging, or to panic, or to revision of the desired form, all of which interrupt the mechanism at the precise moment it is closest to completion. Replace it with, I hold the command. Not, I hold the command and I expect immediate results. Simply, I hold the command. The holding is the work. The channel is forming. The mechanism is in motion. The visible result is downstream of this invisible labor. Thought discipline is not about achieving a permanently elevated emotional state. There will be difficult thoughts. There will be mornings when the reactive patterns arrive early and loudly. The discipline is not perfection. It is the daily, patient, persistent practice of returning to the correct inner position each time the reactive patterns pull it away. Every return is a strengthening of the inner command. Every refusal to permanently surrender the throne to life is against me is an act of creative authority. Over time, what requires enormous deliberate effort begins to require less. The correct inner position, practiced repeatedly, begins to establish itself as the default. And a default position of inner authority is the most powerful creative condition a person can inhabit. Action, in Wattles' certain way, is the inner command made visible. Every task undertaken in the direction of the desired form is not merely practical activity. It is the physical expression of the inner order given to the formless. This means the quality with which action is performed matters as much as the fact that it is performed. Efficient action, Wattles' specific phrase, means doing the present task fully, with complete attention, with the full engagement of creative intelligence, bringing to each moment the same authority that organized the inner command. The person who holds a definite inner command and then acts with half their attention, saving the other half for worry, is not expressing the command through action. They are expressing the command and the doubt simultaneously, which confounds the instruction. Do the present duty. This phrase, returned to repeatedly in Wattles' work, carries an entire philosophy. Whatever action is currently available, not the ideal action that would require circumstances to be more favorable first, but the actual action available right now, must be done, fully, completely, with gratitude for the fact that it is available at all, since every present action, however small, is a point of contact with the world through which channels form. Wattles was emphatic that a person cannot advance by skipping the present duty in pursuit of some future, more impressive action. The present duty is the channel. Perform it completely, and it opens to the next available action, and then to the next. The mechanism moves forward through the sequential, faithful performance of present duties. Do not force others. Command and control are not the same thing. Inner authority does not extend to the manipulation of other people's choices, timelines, or responses. Others are not channels to be forced. They are creative beings in their own right, whose free cooperation is possible but not commandable. The person who attempts to force others into serving their inner command has confused the scope of the law. The law operates on the formless substance through one's own thought, faith, gratitude, and action. When the right people are needed for a channel to open, they arrive through the mechanism of the law, drawn into alignment by the clarity and creative authority of the inner command, not driven by manipulation or pressure. Similarly, do not manipulate. Manipulation is a form of force applied through psychological means rather than physical ones. It operates from the premise that the desired outcome cannot be achieved through the lawful mechanism of inner command expressed in honest action, and that therefore the actions of others must be engineered through indirect means. Beyond its ethical problems, manipulation is creatively self-defeating because it proceeds from the same inner position as begging, the position that the desired form is not available through lawful creative process, that personal agency through force must substitute for creative authority. Action that manipulates is action that contradicts the inner command, even while appearing to serve it. Let action express authority calmly. This is the standard by which all action in the certain way can be evaluated. Does this action arise from the calm authority of an inner command held in faith and gratitude, or does it arise from the agitation of fear trying to control an outcome? Calm action is not slow action, not passive action, not action without urgency where urgency is genuinely required. It is action whose source is the inner throne rather than the outer anxiety. It moves with purpose. It engages completely. It gives full effort, but it is not driven by the desperate internal narrative of someone who believes the desired form is hanging by a thread and that their personal effort is the only thing preventing its collapse. The command is held, the action flows from it, and that flowing is visible in the quality of everything the commanded person does. There will be moments, there will inevitably be moments, when circumstances feel so loud that the inner command becomes almost inaudible. Not because the command was weak or because the law has suspended itself, but because human beings are sensitive to their environment, and an environment delivering consistent pressure can temporarily overwhelm the inner authority that has been carefully established. When this happens, the first instruction is to pause, not to push harder, not to immediately redouble the inner effort of holding the command, simply to stop the reactive movement, the mental scrambling, the emotional flooding, the impulse to immediately do something, anything, to relieve the pressure, and to stand still within the storm long enough to locate the throne. From the stillness, reclaim the throne. This is not a violent act of willpower. It is a gentle but deliberate act of return. Where is the authority? Inside. Where is the command? Still intact, waiting to be re-inhabited. What has changed? Only the loudness of the outer world, which always was and always will be louder than the inner voice, when the inner voice is not being actively listened to. Reclaiming the throne means returning attention to the inner command, the definite desired form, the faith that the mechanism is in motion, the connection to source through gratitude, and doing so not because it feels natural in that moment, but because it is the correct position regardless of how the moment feels. State the command again, not defensively, not defiantly, but clearly as a simple act of inner alignment, the desired form held in mind, the faithful expectation reinstated, the gratitude chosen deliberately. This restating is not a repetition of weakness. It is the functional equivalent of a navigator rechecking their bearing after a period of turbulence. The destination has not changed. The course has not changed. The turbulence simply required attention that would otherwise have been given to the command. Restating returns that attention to its proper home. Then return to gratitude specifically before taking any new action. Gratitude, in the moment of doubt, reconnects the inner life to source in the most direct way available. It says, regardless of what this moment looks like, the supply exists, the creative field is responsive, the command has been received, and the work of the mechanism continues even through what I cannot see. This gratitude is not performed for its emotional benefit, though the emotional benefit is real. It is performed for its functional benefit. It reopens the creative channel that doubt and pressure had narrowed. And from that reopened channel, take one ordered action, one deliberate directional step in the domain of the present duty. Not a frantic burst of compensatory effort, one clear, calm, commanded action. This is how authority is restored, not through sudden breakthrough, but through the quiet, faithful return to the mechanism. Consider a person facing outer disorder, not a single setback, but the kind of accumulating external difficulty where multiple areas of life seem to be applying pressure simultaneously. Financial uncertainty, a professional situation moving more slowly than expected, a relationship dynamic requiring navigation, and the persistent absence of the visible results that were supposed to arrive by now. Every outer signal in their environment is, in practical terms, recommending panic. And for a period, they comply. They begin reacting to each development as it arrives, adjusting their inner command each time the outer news changes, moving from faith to fear and back again with the frequency of someone who has no stable inner ground to stand on. Then something shifts, not in the outer world but inside. The person decides deliberately, and without waiting for circumstances to become more encouraging, to stop reacting to every sign. They observe the signals without giving them the authority to rewrite the command. A difficult piece of news arrives, and they feel the pressure of it, but they do not immediately revise their desired form. A period of silence occurs, and they hold the command through it, refusing to interpret absence as evidence of failure. This is not easy, but it is a decision made from understanding rather than from feeling, and decisions made from understanding have a durability that feeling-based responses never possess. From that decision, the person establishes inner command. They clarify the desired form, the specific, definite image they have been holding vaguely, and then abandoning under pressure, and they hold it with precision. They enter gratitude before each day's action begins. They perform the present duty completely, bringing full attention to each available task rather than fragmenting their effort across fear-driven contingency planning. Their action begins to carry a different quality, less anxious, more directional, more present. They stop trying to force outcomes and start trusting the mechanism. They stop speaking against their command in casual conversation and start speaking from the position of their inner authority. The outer world does not transform instantly. But over the days and weeks that follow, something begins to change in the quality of the person's encounters with the world. A conversation they had been delaying, one that required a clarity and confidence they previously did not have, finally happens, and it goes differently than expected. A timing that had seemed permanently unfavorable shifts, an opportunity that had been invisible to them because their scattered attention could not have registered it, comes into focus. None of these developments is magical. Each is the lawful result of a channel that was always capable of forming, finally receiving the clear, consistent, faithful inner command required to open it. The person's actions became ordered, and the ordered actions engaged the channels, and the channels reorganized the circumstances. This is the certain way. This is what inner command produces, not in theory, but in the practical, visible, traceable life of a person who has learned to order from within. Everything in this teaching returns to a single principle stated from the beginning. Order begins within. Not as a consoling spiritual idea, not as a philosophical preference, as the foundational creative law of how visible reality is produced. The outer world, circumstances, timing, channels, results, is not the origin of your life's direction. It is the outcome of a direction that was set long before it became visible, set at the level of your dominant inner state, by the quality of thought, faith, gratitude, and action that organized your creative relation to Source. Order begins within. It has always begun there. The only question has ever been whether the order given was the order genuinely desired. The universe responds to lawful inner command. This is not a promise extended only to the spiritually advanced, the intellectually gifted, or the historically fortunate. It is the law that governs the creative field in which all human beings exist and move. It does not require perfection. It requires lawfulness, the willingness to give a definite, grateful, faithful command and to express it through consistent action without the constant interruption of doubt, revision, and panic. The creative field is already active. The formless substance is already responsive. The channels already exist in potential, waiting for the inner command that will cause them to form into the visible pathways through which ordered results arrive. Nothing is withheld from the person who holds this command lawfully. Command is not a mood. It is not an inspired state that arrives on fortunate mornings and disappears under pressure. Command is a definite thought, clear, specific, consistent. It is held in faith. the working assumption that the mechanism is in motion even when no visible evidence confirms it. It is maintained through gratitude, the daily chosen acknowledgement that source is active and supply is present. And it is expressed through action, the visible, physical, present moment movement that gives the inner order its contact with the world through which channels open. These four elements constitute the one inner command that orders the universe. Thought, faith, gratitude, action, held together, operating simultaneously, each one supporting and strengthening the others. This is the law, compressed to its essential form. The old life had a particular texture. It began each day by receiving its instructions from outside, from the account balance, the incoming messages, the condition of whatever situation was currently most pressing. Desire was held tentatively, subject to revision by evidence. Prayer was a petition, earnest and unsteady, asking from a place of conscious or unconscious lack. Faith was conditional, dependent on whether the outer world recently seemed to be cooperating. Action was either passive, waiting for the right outer signal, or frantic, trying to force an outcome before it could fail to arrive on its own. The old life was not a failure of effort or sincerity. It was a failure of position. The inner throne was never occupied by a chosen, definite, grateful command, and so everything built on that foundation was built without the architecture that the creative law requires. The new life is not dramatically different in its outer form, at least not immediately. The same daily world must be navigated. The same tasks must be addressed. The same difficulties must be faced. But the direction of authority has reversed. The new life begins from within, from a chosen inner command held through the day, regardless of outer signals. Desire is definite and stable. Faith is not contingent on outer confirmation. Gratitude is taken as a position before it is felt as an emotion. Action is the visible expression of an inner order, not the desperate compensation for an inner uncertainty. The new life is ordered, and the ordering produces over time an outer reality that begins to reflect the consistency and clarity of the command at its source. The old mind gives authority away at every opportunity. It gives authority to bad news, to slow timelines, to other people's opinions, to comparative evidence that someone else has more. The old mind is genuinely convinced that these things have the right to determine what is possible, what is appropriate to desire, and whether the inner command should be maintained or revised. This conviction is held with great sincerity, but sincerity does not determine creative effect. The old mind produces old results, not because the universe is punishing it, but because the commands it gives are fragmented, provisional, and fear-saturated. The mechanism operates faithfully with those commands and produces the experience of helplessness that is their natural outcome. The new mind holds the throne, not victoriously, not with ego satisfaction, but with the quiet, persistent, lawful dignity of a person who has understood the law and decided to live by it. The new mind knows that outer circumstances will challenge the command. It knows that silence will occur and delay will arise, and evidence will sometimes seem to contradict the desired form entirely. And it holds the command anyway, not from stubbornness but from understanding. Understanding that the mechanism is in motion, understanding that channels are forming, understanding that the visible result is downstream of this invisible work. The new mind does not need outer confirmation to maintain inner authority. It has understood the law too clearly for that, and that clarity, held day after day, is what makes the difference between a life that feels like something happening to you and a life that is something you are creating from within, in lawful alignment with the creative intelligence of the universe itself. The universe does not need panic. This is perhaps the simplest and most liberating statement in all of Wattles' teaching, and it stands as its own complete summary. Every frantic plea, every desperate sign-seeking, every revision of desire under pressure, every anxious burst of compensatory action, none of it is required by the creative field. None of it accelerates the mechanism. None of it persuades the formless substance to organize more quickly or more completely around the desired form. Panic is not an offering. It is an interruption. The universe, the intelligent, responsive, expansive creative field that underlies all visible reality, does not require the agitation of the person who desires to receive from it. It requires their order. It needs order. Specifically, it needs the order that Wattles spent his entire working life describing: the definite thought, the faithful holding, the grateful connection to source, and the efficient action that gives the command its visible expression in the world. Order is not cold. It is not mechanical. It is not the rigid, lifeless precision of a system without warmth. In Wattles' world, order is the most loving thing a person can offer the universe, because it is the thing the universe can most completely respond to. A chaotic, divided, fear-saturated inner state leaves the formless substance nothing to organize around. An ordered, definite, grateful, faithful inner state gives the formless substance exactly what it needs to begin the lawful process of bringing the desired form into visibility. The command that orders life begins within, not in the outer world, not in favorable circumstances, not in the achievement of the right credentials or the arrival of the right timing or the granting of the right opportunity. Within, in the specific, daily chosen inner position of a person who has understood the creative law, accepted creative authority, and decided to hold a definite command in gratitude and faith regardless of what the outer world is currently showing. This is the authority secret. This is the one inner command that orders the universe. And it is available to you in full, beginning the moment you decide to occupy the throne. Not when circumstances improve, not when doubt completely disappears, but now, from wherever you are, with whatever you have, in whatever inner position you can honestly take right now. The law is not waiting for you to become perfect. It is waiting for you to become definite. There is a declaration available to you at the end of this teaching, not as a motivational phrase, but as a statement of inner position, a reclaiming of the throne, a naming of where you stand in relation to the creative law and the formless substance that responds to it. Before you speak it, understand what it means. It means you have accepted that order begins within you. It means you are choosing, from this moment, to hold a definite command in faith and gratitude, to act from that command in the visible world, and to refuse to give the authority of your inner throne to outer circumstances, however loud they become. This declaration is not a promise that everything will immediately be easy. It is not a guarantee in the commercial sense of the word. It is a creative position taken in relation to the most fundamental law of your inner life, the law that Wattles illuminated, the law that has always been operating, the law that responds to order with order, to command with channel, to definite faithful gratitude with organized visible result. Say it as a statement of what you are choosing to be, not as a wish for what you hope might become true, because in the world Wattles described, what you choose to be is the most powerful creative act available to you. Say it now and mean it. There is a throne at the center of your inner life. Something has always been sitting on it. Today, you choose what that something is. You choose to place there not fear, not the accumulated pressure of outer circumstances, not the reactive interpretation of this week's evidence, but a definite, grateful, faithful, creative command, aligned with source, expressed through action, held through silence. This is not a statement of arrogance, it is a statement of law. And the law is clear. The universe responds to the order it receives from within you. If you understand this, if you have felt in the course of this teaching the recognition of a law that has been operating in your life whether or not you knew its name, then there is a declaration for you to make, not in a whisper, not tentatively, but as the clear, calm statement of someone who has decided to reclaim creative authority. Leave this declaration in the comments below, and as you write it, let it be true in your inner life, not merely your outer speech. Let the throne be occupied by it. Let the command be given. The declaration is this: I order from within. If this teaching has opened something in your understanding of how the creative law works, if Wattles' world of definite thought, formless substance, grateful command, and efficient action has begun to feel not like a philosophy, but like a living system you can inhabit, then stay close to this channel. Subscribe so that each new teaching in this series finds you directly, building this understanding from every angle Wattles approached it. Command, authority, gratitude, channels, the certain way, and the inner life that creates the outer one. There is more of this teaching to come, more of Wattles' world to explore, more of the creative law to illuminate from angles that most people never encounter. Each video in this series is built for depth, for retention, for the kind of understanding that does not simply pass through the mind, but takes up residence there. If that is what you're looking for, this is where it lives. You have spent enough time waiting for the outer world to give you permission to hold your desire with authority. You have spent enough time revising the command downward whenever evidence suggested it might be too large. You have spent enough time begging from a source that has never needed your panic, only your order. That time is ending now, not because circumstances have changed, because your understanding has, and understanding, once genuinely entered, changes the inner position from which everything else proceeds. From this day, you stop petitioning and start commanding, not with arrogance, but with the lawful calm of a person who has accepted their creative relation to the formless intelligence that underlies all visible reality. The throne within you is yours. Occupy it with a definite thought. Hold it with faith. Maintain it through gratitude. Express it through action. And when the outer world grows loud and the interval of silence tests your resolve, return to the throne, restate the command, and hold. Because the mechanism is always in motion. The channels are always forming, the formless is always responding. It only waits for one thing from you. Order from within, and life begins to answer.